Philippe Béziat, welcome.
Welcome, Agnes. Yes, thank you very much.
We are very, very happy to be able to show your new film, Les Indes Galantes, Gallant Indies, in Sheffield and also for UK audiences online. So I'm very happy that we can have this also online, unfortunately, conversation to talk about this film. I remember I saw a film from you in 2009 called Pélas and Mélisande. I should say that you make films about music, about spectacles. I won't call them documentaries. It's more than that. So regarding Indes Galantes, I would like to say that this was staged by a young contemporary artist called Clément Cogitor. And the challenge was even bigger, I can imagine, for you, as the show was already. So my first question was, what was your approach to record and to share with us this incredible challenge?
Thank you very much for you to welcome me in Sheffield, and I'm very sorry not to be able to have this Q&A live because I'm on shooting next in the beginning of June. It's interesting to make a comparison between the two films, because when I went to Moscow to film the rehearsals of Péléas et Mélisande, the French Debussy opera, I had the same question at the beginning of the work. The question of the point of view, what's the approach, how approaching this situation of a French opera in Moscow for the first time, because it was the first time the Russian people could see on stage this opera from 1902. It was a very old opera, but never been on stage in Russia. And I eventually chose to show the Russian point of view, to try to meet the Russian artists. Half of the cast was French, half of the cast was Russian, and the Russian artists, it was a real discovery for them. And my idea was, if I can understand the discovery, how these people approach this new opera for them, it was a way for my audience to discover also Péléas. So the Russian point of view is an approach to an opera I know, but I want the people in the cinema theater have the same virginity on this piece, about these pieces, classical pieces. And for Gallant Indies, for Les Indes Galantes, this opera, but all very old opera ballet, French opera ballet, very classical music, it was the same. And what was fantastic with the proposition, with Clément Cogitor propositions, was to invite to people who usually don't go on stage on the opera. And these people were dancers, hip-hop dancers, street dancers. And my approach was to try to have their point of view about the opera, about all this year rehearsal of 1 year and nearly 2 years of rehearsals and work. And I know very well Les Indes Galantes de Jean-Philippe Rabault, but that is not interesting. What I know is not interesting. What's interesting is what all these people discover in Rameau, in the opera, in this special, very complete art, total art, shall we say, total art in English as well as in French. Opera is something fantastic for me, because it's a meeting of many different people very different technicals, many techniques, and it's a metaphor maybe of our world, of our society. We have to work together, we have to meet, we have to share time, we have to share work, we have to work together and to make something very special.
Yes, because in this case, we have the street dancers, we have the singers, the opera singers. So it's an opera ballet. So we have the singers, and then we have the musicians, the conductor, the choreographer, the stage, the metteur en scène. So, and then all the people from the technique, the machinists, the workers. I don't know how to say machinist in English. The workers behind the scene. So it's a huge machine.
Yes.
And it's a collective, as you say, I wanted to speak about that. It's a collective creation, and it's a collective experience. As you were saying, you already answered a question, because I was wondering how long the rehearsal took, and apparently you also the shooting, so nearly 2 years, right?
The first scene in the film is taken 2 years before the premiere. It's a beginning on a meeting between Bintou, the choreographer, between the Clément Cogitor, and it's a very little meeting, but it's very important because maybe artistic, aesthetic decisions are taken at that moment. And it's very interesting to see how the ideas in the beginning, how they transform, or how they became reality or not. But this collective adventure is very important for me. And opera is always a collective adventure. It's as I already said. But the idea of Clément Cogitor was to widen the society, to open the society, because opera may be criticized as an elite art, or something for people who have already information about it. But Rameau is a very interesting example of a very easy opera art, because he was composing very easy music. He was composing dance. He was working for the king. He was for the regime, but he was also composing for street, for the fairs in Paris, la Foire Saint-Laurent, la Foire Saint-Germain. He was not a noble. He was an ordinary people, but a genius of music, a scientific, and he was typically this homme des lumières, man from the lighting, the 18th century. He's like Diderot, like Voltaire. He said that every man with the thinking, with la raison, reason, could get his liberty and make a new society.
I think it's quite amazing, because when you think that this has been written in 1735.
Yes.
And I mean, each time I hear a little piece of this music, I don't know if it is the rhythm of the sonority. It's like a hit.
Yes.
You know, it's like it does something in you that it could have been written yesterday. And I think maybe that is why Clément had this idea and chose, I don't know, this piece to, as you said, open this very conservative institution, which is l'Opéra de Paris, and to bring the city and these street dancers inside to stage this opera, which is Les Indes Galantes, which strength is and which energy is amazing. I'm not talking about the stories, okay, the story, but I'm talking about the the energy of the music and obviously of the dancing.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
I think that these people that come from a totally different background, who don't have this, as you said, very truly this opera culture. This is which is normally for the elite, for the bourgeois. And what I like a lot in your film, it's when you are saying you are taking also their point of view. Sometimes we are looking at rehearsals, but we hear their voices.
I started. I worked for the French radio years ago, and I like a lot to work about on sound recording. And maybe sometimes it's more important not to have the image, and because when you are making an interview with someone like we are doing now, it's you may have a conversation, a deeper conversation, a thinner conversation when we are quite free from the look and just about what we are.
What you think?
What's your thing? What your emotion? What your heart? What you say to the people? What we share in the conversation, in the dialogue. And I like a lot make interviews without the images. And I interviewed nearly all the dancers, and with this idea of not to expose them visually, but to try to have a deep conversation with each of them. And also in the idea of that the words, people speaking, is also a music. It's also a material for composing a film, for making a film. And in my films, I use music. I use real documentary images, rehearsal film or from rehearsals. But I like very much make a counterpoint, what we call a counterpoint in music, which is you hear something, but you see another thing, and it's a musical way of make layers in the editing, and to create correspondence, to create echoes between different things. That's why it's documentary, but it's also a lot music.
Yeah, that's why I said it's more than the commentary, because exactly I found that the editing was different because of the material of the film.
Yes. If I would, I made, it's my fourth film on music. The first was Pelléas and Mélisande on the Debussy opera. The second was on Stravinsky's Nose. And the third one was on Traviata, from Verdi's Traviata. And this is the fourth on Rameau. And the editing is different each time, because it's not this. Rameau, as you said, is as a special energy, a dancing energy. It's a body energy, and it's so I wanted the film to be very sensitive, and and it's a show. Verdi is telling a story. Verdi or Debussy is throw the audience in an atmospheres, but Rameau wants us to dance at once.
At once.
And he wants to make a show, a big show, a very impressive show. So that's why Clément made this so huge production.
Yes, and the film is also, I mean, I'm sure the viewer, it's a shock, but the film is also a shock. I mean, because the meeting of these worlds together in this art piece, which is this opera ballet, is really amazing. I mean, I saw the film 3 times, and each time it's very overwhelming and so powerful. And in the end of at the end of the film, you show the reaction of the audience in the opera, and apparently it was the first time ever but they had a standing ovation more than 10 minutes, like if it was a rock concert.
Yes, that's for Rameau. rock,
This is
rock, and baroque is the same. To be honest, I should mention that an English great conductor. Ça y est. Oh, chef d'orchestre anglais. Merde, ça y est. Pardon. Il faudra faire du montage.
Never mind.
Ouais. Has already made South African dancers to dance on Rameau.
In England, you mean?
No, it was in South Africa. And then they went, and when they went all the world to get showing their production.
Wow. Okay, but it was the first time in France.
Yes, and well, it's an old idea, but it's the first time that people from another world, from another cultural background,
yes,
are invited in on the stage of
the stage.
And that's why I should say the audience has felt so powerfully this energy, because street dancers, I'm not a street dancer, but what I felt was that each one has his universe. Is someone. They are not interpreters of a choreographic program. They are used to be performers by their own, or they are not very aware of companies' work, and what's so strong with this dance, this art, is it's so personal. It's themselves directly on stage, and in the opera, you are not it's not as usual to see it, because great singers can have very strength, the terrible strength, but they are very. It's a technical performance. So the audience was overwhelmed, and the critics. Some of the critics not.
that I found really incredible. Yeah, I just wanted to add something about the street dancers, because I think the choreographer Bintou said that Bembele said that, because they're used also a lot to improvise.
Sure.
And how can you improvise when you are on stage in the opera, you know? And this contradiction is very interesting.
Yes, that's why it was so difficult to rehearse, because they had to organize the show as very precisely like any choreography. But there was not a ballet or a company used to obey the orders of Clément or Bintou. It was a meeting. It was of many different boys and girls, young, more, less young, and from different culture, because it's still very different between voguing, crump, flexing with Carl from New York, and walking, popping, and each group had to learn to work together and to try to make something together on stage, but not to be something too square. No, it has to be still very sensitive from from each dancer and each dancer, male or female. So, and they had to, they call it freestyle from at the end, and the moment the end of the production, one of each of them had a little freestyle moment on the stage of the opera. And on the stage of the opera, you never had a freestyle moment because all is written.
Of course. Now I think that's why the audience was overwhelmed. And some critics, as you said, didn't like it at all because they were shocked, the conservative critics. But as it says there is this metaphor, this funny metaphor, because the opera institution now is in Place de la Bastille in Paris. I mean, there is also the old one in Garnier, but this one. So this is why we said that this show and they stormed the Bastille. So is it possible to storm the Bastille? They took it. So I don't know if it's an utopia. Anyway, it succeeded in this show. And I think it gives not only energy, but it gives a sense that art, when you open art, when you really open art, it can make incredible things.
Sure.
And so I think that's why this film is very important.
So, and art has to open. If not, it is getting dead.
Yes.
And every generation, each century has to reopen and the doors. If not, it's a museum.
Yeah, and you were talking about lights, exactly. This is like a new light and a new way. Well, Philippe, thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Agnès, and thank you to all the audience in Sheffield. I hope next time I will be able to come.
You are most welcome anytime.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.